much. Well, joining me now, the Shadow Foreign Secretary Emily Thornberry and Bernard Jenkin, Conservative MP, who is one of the leading campaigners for Brexit. He also chairs the Commons Public Administration Committee. Emily Thornberry, how would the Commons express a view on a complicated, multidimensional negotiation? I mean, what form is that going to take? I mean, the Commons isn't very good at voting for multi-option, complicated things. It's sort of very binary, isn't it? How would it go about it?
No, I understand that, but our frustration is that we're getting no information from the government at all about how it is that they're going to negotiate Brexit. We start on the basis that we have instructions from the British people that they want us to leave. So we want to do our job properly, and we want to leave, which is in the best interest of the British people. Now, I don't think, and I really don't think this is right, that the Tories have a mandate to go into a locked room and fight it out amongst themselves and then decide which way they're going to leave Europe. It is the future of my children and my grandchildren that's at stake. It's the future of the economy, and we think that the government really ought to come to Parliament and put forward a plan, because although they're saying...
a plan before they negotiate it, and then you vote to take it or leave it.
And the point is, right, they say, oh, we're playing our cards close to the chest because we don't want to kind of undermine our negotiating position. But we know that they've got a whole load of different ideas. You know, what Hammond thinks is completely different to what May thinks, is completely different to what Fox thinks. And so on what basis are we going to Europe?
And it's different to what Bernard Jenkins
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is.
Come on, how do you defend that? What is the mandate for the government just taking this ahead and doing it?
The mandate, well, it's the biggest ever vote cast for any single proposition in this country ever. And it's the mandate to leave the EU. And incidentally, the Leave campaign was very clear that leaving the EU meant leaving the single market.
Indeed.
And indeed, the Remain campaign repeatedly said, if you vote to leave the EU, we will have to leave the single market. So I don't see why there's any argument about this now.
Emily Thornberry.
Well, I mean, you say that, but I think what you're relying on, isn't it, is Michael Gove on one television programme saying that that we would have to leave the single market. I mean, the point was during the Brexit vote, it was not clear what the options were. Okay. Yes, you know, we were going to leave, but there are many different ways of leaving the European Union, and those options were not made clear. They were all contradictory. And you know, if you're relying on Michael Gove, remember, Michael Gove is the guy whose wife said you were only supposed to blow the blinking doors off. You know, so he wasn't even serious in terms of leaving anyway.
Let's have a serious discussion.
No, I mean, no, I am.
It's an important point here that we're not holding the Leave campaign to account for all its promises, because it's not giving us 350 million extra a week for the NHS, so we shouldn't let it say this is one thing, but we're not going to do that other thing. But I put it to you, Norway is not in the European Union, correct?
Correct.
So that is compatible, if we adopted the Norwegian option, that would be compatible with the vote that the public conducted.
Well, on this question of accountability...
Just answer the question. Well, it would be compatible with what the public voted for on June the 23rd.
And the Norwegian model was one of the things that was talked about.
I'm not advocating that.
Except that neither the Leave campaign said the Norway option would not be our choice, and we made that clear. And the Remain campaign said the Norway option would be the worst of all possible worlds. So who was advocating in this referendum the Norway option? Nobody.
No, but the Swiss model is compatible with what the public voted for. The WTO model is compatible, and the Canadian model is compatible.
We can probably get a much better deal than the Swiss.
Right. So all of these models are compatible.
But if I can just make the one point...
Michael Gove was talking about Albanian model.
If I can make the one point about accountability. In Nick Watt's introduction to this discussion, he pointed out that there is a debate on Wednesday and there is going to be a vote. Now, you could have put down a vote about what kind of Brexit you want. You're not doing that. You're having a rather phony row about procedure instead.
It's not a phony
and we know
row.
that that's because your party is now far more divided than our party is on Brexit.
Nonsense.
Well, then why don't you discuss substance instead of procedure?
I tell you what, you guys are in government, right? If you want us to be in government, that's fine. We're more than happy to take over. But you guys, unfortunately, are in government. You have a new leader who's taking a new direction to Cameron's. She didn't even stand for leadership herself. She had no manifesto. She has no mandate. You know, it is not clear on what basis you're leaving, and it is right for us as the opposition to hold you to account, excuse me.
Okay.
And that's what we're doing. We're saying, tell us what your plan is. We want to have a debate. The British people need to know.
Right,
you owe it to the British people to tell us the basis on which you're taking us out of the European Union.
At the moment, the government is developing a plan. When the government has a fully fledged plan, I've no doubt it will be tabled.
But the implication is that Parliament won't get a say on that plan.
No,
and so the question is, you're saying...
That's not the case. I mean, for example, there's going to be a second reading to vote probably sometime in May or June on the repeal bill.
Well, that's
Now,
not the same point at all.
well,
And anyway,
no.
by that stage, you will have triggered Brexit.
No.
No, you need to have it before you trigger Brexit.
Well,
On
if you
what
want to have a
basis are
vote
you-
on whether we trigger Brexit or not,
No, we
lay
want
a
to know
motion.
the basis on which you're going
Lay
to
a
do
motion,
it,
say-
so that we know on the basis on which you're going into those negotiations. You have 2 years on triggering Brexit. We want to know the basis on which you're doing it. For example, what's your plan on migration? What's your plan on our continuing relationship with Europe? You know, are we
Okay,
going
well,
to be in the single market or aren't we going to? Because
I
some
can
of the
answer those
Tories are
questions.
saying that we ought to be
I
in
can
the
answer
single
those questions. The
market.
Prime Minister made it absolutely clear in her speech 2 Sundays ago that what migration policy we have as a country after we leave is a matter for the British Parliament. That's a separate matter from taking back control over migration,
Bernard,
which is not negotiable. End of story.
Bernard Jenkin, can I just ask what you each think the majority view in Parliament would be? Let's accept there would be a majority for Remain, probably, if you asked MPs. But if you take the spectrum of options, for exit options, Brexit options, where would the majority be in Parliament, do you think?
I think the majority of Parliament, and I think the majority in the country, whether they voted to remain or whether they voted to leave, did not vote to take someone else's job away, did not vote, vote to undermine the economy,
Bernard
and that
Jenkins,
is the priority.
Where do you think the majority in Parliament would be?
I think when it becomes clearer what the government is proposing as probably the only practical way forward, and when people understand that there isn't this Armageddon black hole in front of the country because we're leaving the European Union, I think the House of Commons will vote. The House of Commons will support the government's position. That's what I predict.
So whatever the government comes up with, the House of Commons will support. And if they won't, you won't put it to a vote anyway.
Because, well, I think there will be lots of votes. You're going to have a vote on Wednesday.
So we won't know what your plans are. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get out of you some detail because we think that's what the public deserve.
Okay.
We'll come back to this. It's a good one.
I think it's right. It's a procedural point she's arguing about.
It's absolutely about
You're arguing your own
substance.
time now. You're
Sorry,
arguing your own
all right,
time.
go on then.